Hey everybody, final thoughts time for Divinity Original Sin, the board game. But before we begin, please keep in mind this is a paid preview. Now with that out of the way, let's talk about it, because this might just be the most replayable campaign game I have ever played. And I really, really mean that, because it presents branching narratives, and it really, really commits to that. You know, there are a lot of games that will give you choices, maybe it'll alter minor things about it, maybe you do one mission instead of another, but it's usually kind of got you on rails. There is so much that you can do that will change the course of the game for you. And I want to tell you about this because I've I've played a lot of this game. I got it stable. Normally with games like this, I'll play a couple of missions, really want to just get a sense of it, see how it's going. But I was a huge fan of the Divinity Original Sin video game. So I really wanted to give this a chance, and I sat it down, and I've played a bunch of it. And I want to tell you, I'm almost done with the campaign. Or I should say, I'm almost done with my run of the campaign. And this is not a thin book. This is huge. And I, if you can see, am very close to the end of it. I think I have one or maybe two missions. I'm like here out of all that's left. But here's the thing. If I played this again, I would go down a different path, and I would face completely different levels. It would be like playing a completely different game. And not only is it different just from the levels that you experience, but from the characters that you make. I'm playing this. I'm two-handing a two-player game of this, and in the version that I've been playing, I'm not using these characters. I'm using different ones. I'm using the Red Prince, sort of a dragon man, and I'm using I can't remember her name. Thalana, something like that. I'm using this barbarian, or mercenary outlaw kind of person, Tangwastal. I don't actually remember from the video game, but she might have been a DLC character. Anyway, I've made Tangwastal, who's supposed to be this barbarian mercenary, into my wizard kind of person, and I have the Red Prince. He's a duelist. He's got does a one-handed weapon and is very fast and does all kinds of stuff. And they're both really good at dealing poison damage and all that. That stuff we didn't even touch with these characters. Not a single skill that I have except for first aid, which is just kind of important for someone to have. Did these characters have? So the way that you can customize your characters in this game is almost unprecedented. There's plenty of games that do customization well, but you really have full control over this. And just because you pick one character doesn't mean you need to go down a specific path. You're not picking your class with this character. You're picking your starting ability, and that's almost it. There's later in the game you get character specific abilities, and those do kind of work better depending on the path that you've gone on. But if you want to, midway through the game, later in the game, you can completely switch things out. When you level up, you can decide, I don't want to do this kind of thing anymore. I actually want to go full melee. Now, you might not have the items to really support that, but you can make that option. And there's plenty of different abilities, even in just the base game. And there's expansions that add a lot more abilities and stuff like that. So there's a lot. When it comes to replayability, expandability, when it comes to just the variety that you get in this game, it is incredible. And I honestly might, after I finish this video, I don't have to play this game anymore. I think I will. I at the very least want to finish the campaign that I've started, because I'm pretty close to the end. So that alone should tell you, whether or not I like this game. I do. Again, I was a big fan of the original, and so maybe I was inclined to like it. But that's only true if this translates the video game well to a board game setting, and I think it has. I think because there are a couple things that really appealed to me that I really like about. That I really like about the video game. And a couple of those things are, I like tactical combat in games like that. I really like games like XCOM or Wargroove, like the old Advanced Wars kind of games. Tactical games like that, big fan of. Now this sort of simplifies some of the tactical nature of combat. It makes it much more, little location based. It's not grid combat. It's not that granular. But I think that works well for this because what it does do and what translates very well is status effects and location effects. It's a big thing in Divinity that, you want to set up your battlefield and you want to set things up so that when you do your big attacks, they can deal their maximum damage, their maximum effectiveness. So you need to set things up. You need to cast rain so that it's wet, so that you can do the lightning attacks that will hit the entire area as opposed to just one person. And that kind of thing is translated in these abilities extremely well. I think that it really does feel like I'm playing the video game in that sense, or it really reminds me of that. And there's tons of these abilities to have. There's like 10 different schools of abilities, maybe more than that. And anyone can grab any of the basic skills from any of them whenever you level up. Now you need to get advanced. There's like a special talent that you can get, which will let you get the advanced abilities in each school. So it makes it a little bit harder to specialize in certain things. But if you want to go down that road, you absolutely can. You can even do that for multiple different fields and really go down 2 different paths very well. And you're rewarded for doing so, but you're also rewarded for spreading out and grabbing a bunch of different abilities that all can work together. So yeah, like I said, the variety in this really holds up, and that I think holds true to the game, in the translation from the source material. I'm such a nerd. Again, like it's a pun from this specific game. So yeah, if you know this game and you're curious about it, story-wise, it follows a very similar path to the game, and so it's familiar. Again, it's been a minute since I've played it, so there were still some surprises, and not everything was exactly the same. And like I said, because you can go down different paths, you're not going to see everything every time. But on top of that, what I will say is that this game covers like Act 1 of Divinity Original Sin 2, which is actually the game that this is adapting. 2 is better than 1 anyway. They're both good, but 2 is better. So this whole game takes place on the island, and your adventures in the island and leaving the island and all that stuff. Which is like Act 1 of Divinity 2. But that game is so long that it would be difficult to translate all of it. But maybe there's going to be, the board game part 2, and that'll keep going with that story. So I think that would be pretty cool. But that's, the chunk of story that you're going to get. And I think that is honestly a very interesting, like, bit of story. And I'm, like, very much engaged in the story that this tells. Another thing I really like about how it tells the story is these journal cards that you pick up during the game. Now, this is just a bit of flavor text, and it's nice to experience that. But on the bottom, there's these little tags. And there's 3 different ones. There's sort of like a boat tag, there's like this mystical tag, and there's like this army tag. And it kind of depends, or what it is doing is it's sort of pushing you into one of the 3 main storylines, you could say. Which is just purely escaping, or figuring out what's like going on mystically in this island, or dealing with the rebellion that is taking place. And so you, by finding these, you are sort of aligning yourselves with one of the 3 narratives. And you kind of have some control over this. It's a little bit, I don't want to say random, but it kind of, in some ways it happens to you. And in some ways, you decide what you want to get out of it. It's more that when you have the choice when you have the option to make choices, you're going to choose between different locations to go. That's usually the way you go. Or occasionally, who you help out, or how you help them out. And through those actions, you are aligning yourselves with the 3 narratives, and you are more likely to get the journal cards that correspond, the corresponding symbols, and they will come into play later down the line. But then sometimes you just find things, and that will give you the other icons as well. So you don't have complete control over that, but you do have influence. Now, as far as the gameplay itself, I guess I've talked a lot about how it feels like, the video game and how the narrative goes, but the mechanics themselves, let's talk about those. This is, I think, a very streamlined way to manage this kind of skill-based combat system. I think that it works very well. It is very dice heavy. So Some people are going to get along with that a little bit less than others. I personally don't mind that at all. I've been playing dice-based games since I was young, big fan of them. And there's plenty of ways to mitigate your luck or to guarantee certain things. I have a lot of re-rolls. I really like, I know that these white dice have 2 blanks on them, but I've got abilities that re-roll dice. So I'm feeling okay about it. I think I should be able to do fine, but occasionally, yeah, you have bad luck or the enemies have good luck, and you just got to deal with that. But defeat in this game is not always the end. Sometimes you get defeated by enemies, you do have to restart the level. But usually, you get defeated, you'll have a punishment for that, but you'll keep going. So it's very rare that you have to just completely restart everything. And then when it comes to your abilities, like your armor, your items, your skills, you tend to have a good amount of control over that. Skills especially. Your items, you find some, you can buy some. The buying is a very random situation, but you're likely to come across at least weapons and armor that can help you out. Sometimes you might need to adapt to what comes up, but you usually have a good amount of control over it. And in my opinion, anyway, the parts where you don't, sort of spices things up a bit. But I do need to say, it's a very dice heavy system. You're rolling dice every time you attack. So there is variety in that. There's a range of outcomes, and I find that to be exciting. There's a lot of times when it's like, okay, if I can roll exactly this specific thing, I can win right now. Otherwise, I might be screwed. Do I take that chance or do I pull back, make a safer play? I'm always going to go for broke. I like betting it all. But it gives you the opportunities to make those choices and to experience that kind of luck the way that you want to. It's not always, just a crapshoot. It tends to feel to me like I can, if I want to, set myself up for big turns that will occasionally have guaranteed results or at least have high likelihood of good results. So I am a big fan of how that works. I do think that at later levels, you can become it almost unbeatable. But then again, the enemies do get really strong. In the early levels, I have had some difficulty with some of these guys. If you're not really well optimized to fight your opponents, there is definitely challenge. And the reason that I was talking about being hesitant about splitting my party up is that it's possible to activate 2 groups of enemies at the same time. Fighting one group of enemies, it can be hard enough. They can hit really hard. And at the beginning of the game, especially, you don't have that much health. Guys can knock you out. So fighting 2 groups of enemies at once is rough. So you do kind of want to stick together. You want to play it safe in that sense. But then you don't have enough time. The time mechanic during exploration is such a good, it's very much a ticking clock, and you don't have enough time to do everything in every location. Sometimes you do, most of the time you don't. So you really have to, decide how you want to go. So there's again, it just adds more to like, if I play this again, next time I'm going to do different things and experience it differently. So that, I think, is giving you a pretty good sense of the game. Maybe, hopefully, you think that it's interesting. Maybe you want to give it a try, especially if you were a fan of Divinity Original Sin 2 or even the first one. I recommend this game. I think that this, as a fan myself, I think that this does a really good job of translating the source material into a board game format. And I think that it's just a fun game. Like I said, I've gone through almost an entire run of the campaign. I never do that for campaign games. So I think that if anything should convince you that I'm a fan of this game and recommend it, it's that I am almost done with it. Or at least done with a single run of it. I absolutely could play again and it would be completely different. So if that's something you're interested in, if you like big narrative adventures, if you like a campaign game that you can play over and over again and get a different result each time, ones with tons of variety and plenty of chance involved, then definitely check out Divinity Original Sin, the board game. Thank you all so much for watching. That's going to be it for me. I will see you folks next time. Bye-bye.